Fazbear Frights is back for the final time, well, until the graphic novels come out, and until Tales from the Pizzaplex comes out. But if we're not counting those, this is the final time Fazbear Frights will make an appearance here, and that is with Felix the Shark. Today I'm going to be covering the first story, giving you a summary, giving you what it means for the lore, telling you my thoughts on it, basically a little review, and what I think it means for the greater story of FNAF in general. That's what we're doing here today. Also, first, a little bit about me. You can skip ahead if you don't care. But this is the second time I'm recording this video, so I'm just gonna let it be known that I'm not happy with that. I literally forgot to turn this hunk of junk on beforehand. So, there was no audio. It was just me going like this. Which is not fun. Anyway, that's about it. Let's cover Felix the Shark, shall we? This story is about a guy named Dirk. He's actually not a child, for once. Most of the protagonists in these stories are children. This guy isn't. But he does remember being a child and going to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza when he was a wee little lad. And most of his friends do too. They're having a lovely conversation about Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and how much fun they used to have there when Dirk brings up a character that all of his friends don't seem to really remember called Felix the Shark. Now, keep in mind, these guys didn't grow up in the same area. They grew up in all kinds of different places with different Freddy's locations. The one that Dirk grew up with had a Felix the Shark. Felix the Shark was this animatronic shark who went around in a little water-filled tube around Freddy's, and you could swim with him with a mouthpiece attached, so you could breathe and kind of swim along with the shark animatronic, which is kind of cool. Of course, his friends all think this is terrifying, and I can see that. It is kind of terrifying, especially for kids. But Dirk is like, no, I actually loved this thing. What are you guys talking about? Now, the story does spend a lot of time giving his friends, like, you know, personalities and stuff, and going into their, like, whole backstories and everything. None of it is important, and they never show up at all later in the story, so we can kind of gloss over that, but I figured I'd mention in case you care at all. Anyway, Dirk goes on this quest to find Felix the Shark and prove he isn't crazy, and to prove that Felix the Shark did actually, in fact, exist at one point. So he goes all over the place, and eventually he finds an old town called Forkstop. Yes, that is the real name of this town, and it's wonderful. I believe the story gives it a backstory as to why the town is called this, but it's not important. You can read the story yourself if you care. I don't. But in this town, there are actually people who remember Felix the Shark, and they remember the Freddys that used to be here. Unfortunately, though, no one seems to remember where it is somehow, or what happened with it, because they assume it was torn down, but Dirk doesn't know where to actually look for this Freddy's location, if it is even still there. But eventually, after following a couple leads, he does manage to find out a little more about the guy who actually owned this Freddy's location. This isn't the guy who owned Freddy's in general, like all the locations. This isn't one of the founders or anything. It's not William, it's not Henry. But I will say, I do think that there are some similarities here between this character. His name was Aaron Sanders, and William from the games, and I suppose from the books as well. Let me know if you agree. I'll give you a summary of who this guy was in a second, but let me know in the comments if you agree about this guy potentially being a parallel to William. This guy, Aaron Sanders, one time he was at the beach with his family. It's unclear if this is before he owned the Freddys or after he came into ownership of the Freddys, but at some point, he and his family was at the beach. This is actually after a tragedy where his wife passed away. Interesting, because we don't know what happened to William's wife, but we're assuming something bad. His son drowned out at sea, which is just a complete tragedy. But what's interesting is a shark actually brought his son's body back to shore. At least that's what this guy said. Aaron Sanders has been dead for years by the time this story starts, so no one knows if this actually happened, but apparently a shark brought his son back to shore. His son was dead, but his body, anyway. And because of that, Aaron Sanders wanted to make a shark animatronic at Freddy's here. Now, obviously, this is terrifying to most people, but he wanted to do it. I guess as maybe a sort of, like, memorial thing? I don't know. Weird, but I can see why he would do it. And so he does, and a lot of people find it terrifying, but Dirk, when he was at Freddy's, actually seemed to like Felix the Shark. He says he feels like Felix was kind of a kindred spirit. You know, like they had a lot in common, almost, even though Felix was literally a robot. And what Felix would do is Felix the Shark would kind of go around in this tube and you could swim with him. Great fun, good stuff. Now, Aaron passed away years ago, but his daughter is still alive, and we find out that his daughter actually wrote a book that Dirk is a pretty big fan of. The book is called The Dogged Dogmatist, and it's a book that Dirk's read many times. He made a board game based off of it. He's a big fan This woman, unfortunately, doesn't seem mentally stable at the moment. She can't really speak, can't communicate very well. Obviously that's tragic for her, but it's also not very handy for Dirk because he's trying to figure out what happened to Freddy's, and that doesn't make it very easy for him, I guess. He tries to talk to this woman, and while she doesn't exactly talk to him, she does give him a book, the same book that he read and has read many times, and a pendant of hers. Now, the book itself, you'd think wouldn't mean much because it's one that Dirk has read several times. But he takes another look at it, and he realizes it applies to something that he had seen earlier. Now, what I failed to mention until now is Dirk actually has went to a few locations around town so far, one of those being an old water park. Don't know why. I guess he thought maybe Freddy's was built around, maybe by a water park. That's what happened in the Silver Eyes books, which, by the way, I'm doing a dub of the Silver Eyes book on my channel. If you're curious, you can check that out. But in that book, basically what happened is Freddy's was built around by a mall that was never finished, and I think that could be a parallel to how in this story Freddy's was built around by a water park. At least that's what Dirk thought, but he didn't seem to see anything. But now that he is in the possession of this book that this woman gave to him, he realizes there might be some parallels here to his search, interestingly enough. The book itself is about a man who meets uncertain doom after he's trying to find a shark-croc hybrid. Sound familiar? Yeah, it sounds like kind of what Dirk is doing in this story. And it's kind of a mystery, it's got a mystery element to it anyway. It's got clues and stuff that lead this guy to finding this shark-croc hybrid. But some of the clues never really go anywhere, in the story at least. In this book, some of the clues never really mean anything for the rest of the story, and so the readers of this book have always found that kind of strange. But what Dirk realizes now is these clues apply to the situation he's in, and they apply to the water park. Now, this is going to seem like a huge stretch, and it definitely does to me. But what these clues in this book mean are they are telling Dirk exactly where to go to find Freddy's, which is completely bonkers because I don't know why this woman would have written this book to help someone find Freddy's. It's as if she knew someone was going to be looking for Freddy's in the future, which maybe, but I find that very weird and hard to believe. But regardless, these clues lead Dirk to a place on the ground in this water park where he finds a suspicious indent. He unlocks a hidden section of the park underground, and he finds like this underground maze. Now he follows a tube and pipes in this little underground area, and he manages to find the room that Felix the Shark used to be in Freddy's. Now he has a very vivid memory of this place, and so he remembers exactly how to use it. He attaches the breathing hose, he opens the hatch, and he goes in, and he expects to see Felix the Shark there. In this tube where he always was, and he always swam around with, and you could swim with him, and he wants to do this so he can prove to his friends that Felix was indeed real. Unfortunately, this was very stupid of him, and now the hatch closes behind him, and he doesn't even think of the fact that he might not be able to get it back open. But Felix the Shark, sure enough, comes out, and he's looking a little older than before. Time has not really been kind to Felix the Shark. Obviously, he's just an animatronic, but parts of his metal have come off, paint has come off, parts are, one of his eyes is falling out, and it's kind of creepy, and now Dirk sees why people maybe were scared of this thing, even more so, now that he's, broken and such. But Felix starts to swim like he always did, and he chases Dirk around this tube, like he always used to. But Dirk is now terrified, and he's like, oh, maybe this was a bad idea. He's like, actually, I want to get out of here. So he tries to open the hatch as he goes around these tubes. He comes back to the starting point. He tries to, as he's going by, open the hatch quickly and get out. But he can't, because it can only be opened by the outside, apparently. And he's stuck. So Dirk keeps going around and around this tube, past the hatch over and over again with Felix right behind him. And it's implied in the story that he's not going to get out. It's implied that he's going to be stuck here forever. And that's kind of where it ends, because he can't get out. He'll probably eventually run out of food and such. He probably won't run out of water. He has a lot of that. He has oxygen from the breathing thing. But he's probably going to get pretty hungry. And that's it. Overall, a pretty good story. I do think there's a lot that, maybe was a logical leap, but I think overall, it's a pretty good story, and I can look past a lot of the stuff that maybe seems contrived, because it kind of feels like old Fazbear Frights, you know, like the first 5 books before it went completely off the rails and we had, like, evil street signs coming after our characters here. That's a real thing. Kids at Play had a evil street sign as the main villain that turned you to dust, I think it was. Such a weird series. But this feels, and maybe it's just because I haven't had Fazbear Frights for a while and I'm missing it, but it feels kind of like a return to form, and I really liked this book. Obviously, I have problems with it, and I have things that I think could have been done better, like the way he gets to this water park and finds out what happened there seems contrived. The fact that the book was deliberately leading him there seems ridiculous. But it's a fun story, and I really enjoyed it. And obviously, I'm going to be covering the next 2 stories as well. The only lore significance that I think this story really has, that I can think of, is the parallels that might be there with William. But even that, you know, we don't know for sure. I won't jump to conclusions. I'm just saying it might be there. Hey guys, it's me, Chris. You, I think, should check out the Twitch channel where I stream, and it's funny, and it's entertaining, and you would love it. You can go to twitch.tv/elementioit, and we will have a great time if you want to check out the streams. Okay. On with the video. Overall, a pretty good story, and I'm not exactly sure why it was scrapped, but I enjoyed it. Thank you guys for watching. If you want to see more, there's this video right here that I chose specifically for you. It's somewhere here. I think you'll like it. That's all I'll say.